Hi, my name is Pastor Jean Ai, and today I will be speaking about a topic that's slightly controversial, but probably no more so compared to the Dorje Shugden issue. As a Malaysian, the topic of self-immolations does not directly affect me, but as a previous supporter of the Tibetan cause, I have some concerns about what I observe in the Tibetan community today. So it is not that I'm trying to impose my opinions, nor do I wish to hurt anyone. It is certainly not my intention to belittle the sacrifices of people who have lost their lives. But I am generally and genuinely concerned about this unnecessary loss of lives. The Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines self-immolations as a deliberate and willing sacrifice of oneself, often by fire. Historically, the term has been used to refer to acts like starvation or harakiri, but since the 1960s, it has been used to almost exclusively refer to suicide by fire. For most people, the first time they ever saw a self-immolation was during the Vietnam War, when the image of a monk, Venerable Thich Quang Duc, self-immolating was widely publicized. The image of a calm, dignified monk meditating and not flinching while he was on fire moved everyone who saw it. The American president at the time, John F. Kennedy, said that no single image in history has generated so much emotion as that one. Meanwhile, the American public was so shocked, it compelled them to pressure their government to withdraw support for the Vietnamese leadership at the time who were persecuting Buddhists. In more recent times, the act of self-immolations has become identified with the Tibetan cause. Since 2008, over 150 Tibetans have self-immolated to express their desperation and suffering over their lack of political progress. However, their actions have come to be seen as less effective than Venerable Ducs of Vietnam. This is because, in spite of the self-immolations, very few countries around the world have responded to the tragic loss of Tibetan lives by increasing their financial, political, and moral support for the Tibetans. This has led people to ask, are self-immolations acceptable? The act of self-immolations can be examined from two perspectives, secular and spiritual. From a secular point of view, when you engage in any form of protest, you do so because you want to bring about a particular result. So if that form of protest is not gaining the desired result, you have to wonder if it really makes sense to continue in the same way instead of changing tactics. Although over 150 Tibetans have given their lives, world leaders have either maintained or even reduced the amount of support they give to the Tibetans. For example, India, who is the Tibetans' greatest benefactor, and who should theoretically be more sympathetic towards the Tibetan plight, continue to maintain their one China policy in spite of these self-immolations. So if even India is not moved, why do Tibetans continue in this act? Observers have also examined the Tibetan self-immolations from a spiritual point of view because the Tibetans are famously Buddhist. As Buddhists, we believe in the preciousness of human life. It is the first chapter of the Lamrim, which is the book studied by the vast majority of Tibetan Buddhists all around the world. Buddhists talk about the preciousness of human life because it endows us with the mental and physical capacity and the environmental factors to study, understand, and practice the Dharma. So from a Buddhist perspective, everything about self-immolations is not acceptable. As a lay Buddhist, it is one of your refuge vows not to take the life of another sentient being, and that includes yourself. And as an ordained Buddhist, it is one of your core ordination vows not to take any life. So once you break that core vow, unfortunately, you are no longer a monk. Secularly and spiritually speaking, therefore, there is very little reason to continue with self-immolations. Secularly, it is not getting the Tibetan community the results they want, and spiritually, it does not match their Buddhist culture and principles. So now the question is, why has the Tibetan leadership allowed it to continue for this long? After the 20th, 30th self-immolation, why didn't the government speak up strongly against it to stop it and to tell the people that it is not working to pressure world leaders to increase their support for them? And what are they doing now to stop more Tibetans from giving up their lives? Unfortunately, it seems that not much, or rather, not enough is being done. I have some friends who live in the Tibetan settlements, and they've told me it's frustrating for them to see the self-immolation memorials because it makes the self-immolations look good. There's one in Delhi's Majnu Katila Tibetan settlement, for example, and another in Dharamsala. And these kinds of memorials kind of glamorize the deaths and therefore encourage people to follow in the self-immolators' footsteps because they know they will be celebrated for their act which they feel demonstrates their loyalty to Tibet. All of this will only lead to more Tibetan lives being lost, and my friends just don't want to see this happening anymore. They would rather have more Tibetans live to fight another day than to give up their lives now. Friends have also told me that people do wonder why the Tibetan leadership spends money on these memorials, when perhaps they should be using this money to build schools, to fund hospitals, to establish libraries, to help improve the lives of the Tibetans in exile. Why tell someone you love them after they've died when you can show it to them while they're alive? Now, all of this has led to speculation that the Tibetan leadership do not actually want to speak up against the self-immolations because it serves some sort of purpose for them. As we have seen with the recent scandals, such as the missing $1.5 million, the Tibetan administration is quite money-driven. Hence, people are talking and saying that the Tibetan leadership allows these self-immolations to keep happening because it keeps the Tibetan cause relevant in modern times, when the world is already dealing with so many other geopolitical issues. So as long as the Tibetan cause remains relevant and Tibetans continue to die in the name of Tibet, it means people will continue to donate and sponsor their government. But the sad fact is, these 150 over deaths have not led to much. In fact, day by day, support for the Tibetan leadership continues to decrease, while the world opts to form positive bilateral relations with China, arguably the world's most powerful economy today. So again, we go back to the question, why do the Tibetan leadership allow the self-immolations to continue when the only thing it seems to be doing is reducing the number of Tibetans? After all, Tibetan lives are much, much more precious than any money their leadership can receive. If we give them the benefit of the doubt, perhaps the Tibetan leadership did try to stop it, but people are not listening. However, it is very difficult for me to believe that they have run out of ideas to try and stop the self-immolations. Take the Dorje Shukden ban, for example. The Tibetan leadership have printed books, brochures, filmed videos, hung up posters, all telling people over and over again to give up Dorje Shukden. They've spoken out so strongly against the Dorje Shukden practice. They've even gone so far as to expel monks from their monasteries if they refuse to give up Shukden. So how come the Tibetan leadership have not gone to the same lengths when it comes to self-immolations? That is the question many people are asking. People are also saying that when so many Tibetans have self-immolated, it actually reflects the lack of hope they feel in their Tibetan leadership. The fact is, within effective governments where people have their voices heard, the population does not need to self-immolate in protest. They have proper democratic channels through which they can make their voices heard. It's only in autocracies and authoritarian regimes, or when the people are desperate because no one knows they're suffering, that they have to resort to such extreme acts of protest which involves giving up their lives. In his press release regarding self-immolations, my teacher, His Eminence Tsem Rinpoche, said that the act of setting oneself ablaze is not one that should be glorified, politicized, or encouraged as a means of accomplishing personal or political agendas. As Buddhists, we should reject all forms of violence and use our precious human lives to seek more positive ways to create the change we want. Rinpoche urged the Tibetan leadership to speak up more strongly against the self-immolations. Rinpoche suggested that they can make announcements and send representatives to all the Tibetan settlements. Educate people on why they should stop self-immolating, because Tibetan lives are precious and giving it up is not helping to raise awareness or support for the cause. Rinpoche has also respectfully requested His Holiness the Dalai Lama to speak up firmly and ask Tibetans not to destroy their own lives and to achieve their cause through peaceful means. After all, if His Holiness has spoken out strongly against the practice of Dorje Shukden, he can also do the same against self-immolations. In summation, I offer for you Rinpoche's actual words of request. I humbly request the Tibetan leadership and governments around the world to end needless suffering. Please be more compassionate. Please open your hearts. Please use love, compassion, and wisdom to heal conflicts and make the world a better place. We can find more positive ways of making change in society. We must educate people on this strongly and stop all acts of self-harm which cause more suffering on top of what people already face in life. I offer my heartfelt and deepest prayers for all those who are self-immolated, for a cause they strongly believe in. I send my heartfelt prayers, tears, and anguish, along with condolences to their families and friends. Again, all of this is being said out of concern, as someone who formally supported the Tibetan cause. It is not being said with the intent of hurting anyone or diminishing the significance of their sacrifice. I hope the Tibetan leadership will come together soon to protect and preserve the Tibetan culture and religion, starting first with protecting and preserving their people's lives. Thank you very much for listening.